In 1991, the first sonar-related mass stranding of whales occurred in Greece. This was the first encounter of environmentalists and the U.S. Navy on the issue of sonar. Protecting the country and preserving whales are equally important concepts, but there must be a balance or compromise between the two in order to stop the arguing of environmentalists and the Navy, while benefiting both sides. SOS, Whales in Danger, the controversial conflict between the U.S. Navy and environmentalists. Navy sonar has created many issues in global waters for over 20 years. Their powerful high-pitched screeching endangering many underwater sea creatures and resulting in their death. After the Titanic crisis in 1912, a device called the Eco Ranger was invented in order to find sunken icebergs. It later evolved into active sonar, which was used to locate Germany's lethal U-boats during World War I. When faced with the nuclear-armed submarines of the Soviets, the United States lacked a sonar system that could track submarines among vast ocean basins, bringing on a whole new generation of sonar, from SOSUS, a chain of sound surveillance listening spots in oceans, titled passive sonar. This type of sound surveillance allowed the Navy to pick up any sounds emitted from other submarines. Greatly increasing the discovery of enemy submarines, it was a huge victory for the Navy, but unfortunately not for the whales. In 1991, 2 European researchers discovered mass strandings in Greece related to nearby naval exercises. As the amount of mass strandings grew, always with Navy ships or submarines nearby, marine biologists began to realize the severity of the issue. Among all of the sea creatures affected by sonar, whales are one of the most impacted species by these risky naval exercises. Multiple accounts of stranded whales on beaches and severe injuries have been linked to the testing of sonar to detect other ships and submarines. With some sound waves traveling up to tens or hundreds of miles and retaining an intensity of 140 decibels, the behavior of the cetaceans are largely influenced, later resulting in whales beaching themselves on the shore, which makes the possibility of extinction higher and higher. Before beaching themselves, many whales undergo physical trauma, such as bleeding around the brain, ears, and other tissues, as well as large gas bubbles in their organs. Each of these symptoms can lead to change in the dive patterns of whales that their bodies can't handle, ensuring severe injuries or death. This effect is similar to a disease that can kill scuba divers when they surface too quickly, titled decompression sickness, which occurs when gas bubbles form due to a change in pressure, allowing any body part to be affected negatively. Before any type of sonar was invented, whales had already been using a similar communication method for millions of years. There are far-traveling clicks and whistles necessary to mate. So if a source comes along with power even stronger than the giants of the sea, you can imagine what devastating things it could cause. With such a travesty existing, environmentalists had immediately leaped into action in hopes of saving the whales. But asking the Navy to stop their low-frequency active sonar testing needed to protect the world wasn't as easy as it sounded. There were obviously two very different sides with equally important reasons for their actions, thus starting a conflict that would continue for many years. But it wasn't until two men, Joel Reynolds and Ken Balcom, made a crucial discovery and decided to team up against the Navy, that people really began to consider every aspect of this underwater catastrophe. Written by author Joshua Horwitz, War of the Whales tells the remarkable story of these brave men. On March 15, 2000, Ken Balcom, a marine biologist, was studying the prehistoric species of the beaked whale in the Bahamas when a man on his research team had discovered one stranded along the shores of Abaco Island. After examining the specimen's state and finding no signs of ship collision, he and his team managed to get it back into deeper waters, only for it to return to the same shore moments later, indicating extreme confusion. Shortly after this occurrence, a call came in of yet another stranding along Rocky Point, following 14 others describing 3 different species of beaked whales and creating one of the largest multi-species whale strandings ever recorded. As witness to this mayhem, Ken Balcom knew there was something terribly wrong. When flying over the water via helicopter in hopes of saving another disoriented whale he had received a call about, Ken spotted a Navy destroyer and began to think that it was responsible for the mass stranding. After an autopsy was taken of the whale heads, evidence of bleeding in the ears proved that the reason for the stranding was definitely from a source of sound. that source being the sonar emitted from the ship at 265 decibels, searching the canyon for Navy decoy submarines. In an interview with National Geographic, Horwitz states, "It's also been compared to the sound of a jet fighter. So you have to imagine a 4-mile deep, 100-mile long, 50-mile wide canyon, which is a bit like a bathtub, being bombarded with an acoustic storm." In the world of whale scientists, word spread fast among anyone who could help. Joel Reynolds, a senior attorney of NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council, in Los Angeles, was on vacation in Mexico when he received the call about the mass stranding in the Bahamas. In previous years, he had discovered a submarine surveillance system that uses its high-intensity blasts within large ocean basins, one of the most top-secret subjects in the Navy. Joel had researched everything he could about whales and sonar, creating multiple theories, but when he brought his ideas to the Navy's attention, they dismissed them for not being real proof. Desperate for a case to prove the severity of sound pollution and the impact it had on marine life, Joel soon contacted Ken to exchange information and discuss a possible collaboration. With the proper evidence, like Balcomb's preserved findings, he could force the U.S. Navy and the U.S. National Marine Fisheries Service to unveil their knowledge of the destroyer. This would eliminate the denial of responsibility for all mass strandings related to low-frequency active sonar from the Navy due to invalid evidence that had been taking place for years. Referred to as the Silent Service, most things were classified, especially their plans of sonar testing. But this time, they couldn't escape from the wrath of environmentalists that would soon follow, exposing their most kept secrets. With the evidence from Ken Balcomb and Joel Reynolds' skills of law, they worked with NRDC to file a case for stopping sonar, putting the Navy on trial. This lawsuit progressed until it reached its end at the Supreme Court, unfortunately, with the Navy in favor. Though a loss for many environmentalists, especially Ken Balcomb and Joel Reynolds, it only made the need to save the whales more pressing. This issue would not end here, and the perseverance of every single person with the goal of saving the whales is remarkable. Soon after the Bahamas stranding incident in 2003, a video was taken by the Center for Whale Research with Ken Balcomb, executive director, narrating. It showed a group of around 20 orca whales swimming in Puget Sound, with a Navy destroyer ship in the distance, its sonar so loud that it was clearly audible by the people recording. During the exercise, the whales began swimming in a cramped cluster and grew very close to the shore. Familiar with this behavior, Ken knew the signs of confusion were from the loud and painful sounds of the Navy ship. Towards the end of the video, Balcomb states, "The Navy needs these systems, so what they need to learn is when and where to practice." Since then, strandings in Madeira, Vieques, the Canary Islands, the northwest coast of the United States, Kauai, and Spain have all occurred because of sonar. Many more cases were filed by groups like NRDC, who sued the Navy yet again in 2014 for their enlarged amount of explosives and sonar programs within California and Hawaii. As Joel Reynolds said, "All you ever win is the right to stay in the battle and return to court to fight another day." And fighting has definitely made a huge impact. In an interview with National Geographic, Joshua Horwitz, author of War of the Whales, states, "The big picture here is that if you look back 20 years before this lawsuit, the Navy was basically operating in a black box. Now it has to file for permits with fisheries and NOAA. It has to file environmental impact studies." Luckily, for the duration of these legal battles, environmentalists and attorneys have managed to stay strong, and within the past year, the Navy has agreed to make a few compromises in order to preserve the whales without stopping sonar altogether. On September 14, 2015, the U.S. Navy agreed to limit their sonar testing in areas of endangered species such as the Maui 4 Island Complex and off the coast of Southern California. These areas are used by whales for feeding, migrating, and reproducing. The National Marine Fisheries Service was sued by Earthjustice in 2013 for approving the Navy's 5-year plan that breached the National Environmental Policy Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and the Endangered Species Act. Realizing the laws violated by the Navy and NMFS and the illegal harming of sea creatures caused by the sonar, a federal judge sided with Earthjustice, forcing the Navy to reduce their testing in the habitats of threatened whales, including the blue whale, whose feeding takes place off the coast of Southern California. The agreement will expire in late 2018, where after that, the Navy is required to apply for a 5-year extension to NMFS. But for now, the lives of many whales are spared, confirming that safeguarding U.S. waters and preserving whales can both be accomplished by restricting Navy sonar in habitats of extreme importance. Zach Smith from NRDC doesn't predict any upcoming cases. We were adversarial with the U.S. Navy for 15 years, but we worked together to reach this agreement. We hope this approach can now be applied in the future and to other areas, such as the Pacific Northwest. Thanks to this great news, it looks as if the future of whale protection will only get better from here. After a 20-year conflict between the Navy and marine enthusiasts, a few simple limitations of sonar proves that a balance between the protection of cetaceans and the guarding of U.S. waters is possible without favoring one side more than the other.